the amendment violates House Rule 16, Clause 7. Now, you can disagree with me, but you're not the chairman anymore. I'm sitting in the chair now.
Reclaiming my time.
Wow. Honestly, someone had to say it. You just watched Jerry Nadler, the former chairman, interrupt the proceedings, lecture the current chair, accuse him of being afraid, and react strongly after losing the gavel. And how does Mike Johnson respond? He stays composed. He listens, then calmly, clearly, and correctly explains how the process actually works. This isn't about personal attacks, it's simply a matter of procedure. Moments like this highlight the difference between following the rules and putting on a show for the cameras. We're about to watch the full exchange, so pay close attention to who is trying to maintain order and who is creating disruption. If you're tired of political grandstanding and want more breakdowns of what really happens in these committees, hit the like button and subscribe. It really helps. All right, let's watch the full clip.
Mr. Chairman, there are 13 ayes and 9 noes.
The motion to table.
Mr. Chairman.
It passes. Yes. Who seeks recognition?
I seek to strike the last. Move to strike the last word.
The ranking member is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, in this last amendment by Ms. Scanlon that was just ruled out of order, you ruled it out of order because it references a specific date. In my parliamentary universe, adding a specific date is considered a limiting amendment. It limits the scope of the underlying amendment. It does not expand it. Therefore, it cannot be a grounds for holding an amendment out of order because it limits it. It doesn't expand it. It's called in parliamentary terms a limiting amendment, which is always permitted. So this is just another example of the Republicans using obviously specious reasoning because you're afraid to vote on anything to do with January 6th. You're afraid to vote on all the things we've talked about before because your constituents might hold you responsible. So I would ask you why this is not a limiting amendment. Why this, in what way this expands the scope of the amendment, and I'll yield to you for the purpose.
I'll be happy to answer. We will belabor the point further. I've already explained this, that by presenting this amendment, it changes the purpose of the bill and makes it about January 6th. On its face, by your explanations, by all the comments that have been made, you want this to be about January 6th. You just said it again. You emphasize the same point. That's not what the underlying legislation is about.
Reclaiming my time.
You asked me to respond, and I'm giving you the response. Okay, so on its face, the amendment violates House Rule 16, Clause 7. Now, you can disagree with me, but you're not the chairman anymore. I'm sitting in the chair now.
Reclaiming my time. I certainly do disagree with you. And again, I repeat that the motives of the Republicans today are shameful as seeking only to avoid voting on all these different subjects that have been raised today.
Gentleman yields back. The chair is going to respond to the outrageous claim that there's hypocrisy going on here. All the clutching of pearls is so far out of order, and I'm going to clarify the record here for anyone who's watching at home, high school students who are studying civics, and some on this committee who should understand the rules. The rule is, again, let me state very simply what the rule is. House Rule 16, Clause 7 says that an amendment cannot introduce material beyond the scope and purpose of the bill before us. Let me tell you why the last amendment, by way of example, was ruled out of order. I've already explained this again, but I'll give you further detail. Ms. Scanlon's amendment says on page 2, strike all that follows in the underlying bill after the resolving clause and insert the following, that Congress acknowledges the United States Capitol attack on January 6, 2021. The underlying bill says something very different. It says, be it resolved that Congress recognizes and appreciates the dedication and devotion demonstrated by the men and women of local law enforcement who keep our communities safe, and 2, condemns calls to defund, disband, and dismantle or abolish the police. The reason, everybody watching at home, The reason that they're so anxious to change the language of the underlying legislation is because of the last sentence that I just read you, that last clause, because this resolution condemns calls to defund, disband, dismantle, or abolish the police. They're all on record, including the ranking member who just clutched his pearls and told me that I was out of order here.
Would the gentleman
He is
yield?
on record saying that he wanted to defund the police. I'm not going to yield. You guys have talked enough. And you've all accused us of abusing the rules. This amendment, just like the ones before it, is a blatant violation of House Rule 16, Clause 7. It is not germane because it wants to talk about January 6th, and it wants to get rid of the condemnation of the call to defund police, which was their mantra here until just recently.
Would the gentleman
Because now
yield?
we've seen the results.
Mr. Chairman, will you yield
The
to a
chair
question?
does not yield. I will yield if you have an amendment. No, I'm not going to yield to a question. No. You've talked enough, Mr. Cicilline.
You don't get to decide that, Mr. Chairman. You don't get to decide who talked
It's my
enough.
time, and I'm not yielding.
Okay, then I ask.
I just want to tell you, the hypocrisy here, we've been in contact with a former parliamentarian of the House who's been watching these proceedings on TV, and he says every single amendment was in order because striking a clause in the preamble is per se germane, neither adds nor subtracts, and police, by definition, means all police, and that includes the January 6th police, it includes anything else. So I just want to tell you that's just another confirmation of your hypocrisy.
The amendment does not satisfy the subject matter and fundamental purpose test. Before you balk, wait, let me explain. Because you cut out the second resolution clause, the important sentence about defunding police that the sponsor of the legislation just said was central to his. This is not a whereas clause, it's the resolution. You're changing the scope of the legislation by striking that out.
Mr. Chairman, you can always limit the scope of a bill by an amendment. You can always limit it. That doesn't go to its.
It changes the purpose of the gentleman's
There's
bill.
no
as he
such
just
thing
said.
that says you can't change the purpose.
That's a
There's
matter
no
of
such
opinion
thing.
and should be voted on.
You don't get to decide what the purpose of the underlying resolution is and whether it's
sir.
changed.
No, sir.
Mr. Chairman, since when do we have argument while the chair is making a ruling?
I'm
The
in.
chair started being so absurd.
Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. Wait a minute, Mr. Ranking Member. I sat under lots of absurd decisions from you. All right. Let me read you Section 7 under House Rule 16. It's Clause 7, fundamental purpose. Another test used by the chair in determining germaneness is one in which the fundamental purpose of the bill is compared with the fundamental purpose of the amendment. See Manual Section 933. If the purpose or objective of an amendment is unrelated to that of the bill in which it is offered, the amendment may be. Let me finish. That's 8 Canon, Section 2911. The test is particularly applicable to an amendment in the nature of substitute. Okay. If the purpose, well, it gives lots of examples. All right. Let me say this. The parliamentarian who's watching on television, who is, I'm sure, a Democrat parliamentarian or would not have had Mr. Nadler's cell number, let me tell you that this does, in the view of this chair and this parliamentarian, expand or change the purpose of the bill before us. And so our interpretation of House Rule 16, Clause 7, is that it is not germane. Now, the other side is going to disagree, but that's the beauty of our system. The majority party is in the chair, makes decisions, it's appealable, it's subject to table. We've gone through that process here. This is the way this works, and always has. And there are thousands of examples of this and precedent that has been set in the Judiciary Committee and its storied history. So,
Mr. Chairman,
you're not recognized. So for all of the drama here, that is the ruling of the chair, and I yield back.
I appeal the ruling of the chair.
The ruling is appealed. Does the gentleman seek to table? Motion to table. The appeal is made, and the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Jordan?
All right, now that you've seen the full lead up, let's break it down, because context really matters here. First, Jerry Nadler's recognized to speak. Instead of making a calm procedural argument, he immediately goes on the offensive. He calls the chair's ruling specious reasoning, essentially accusing it of being false or misleading. Then he adds that Republicans are afraid to vote on anything related to January 6th. Now, whether or not you agree with that point, this isn't a procedural objection. It's a direct attack on the chair's motives. And Nadler, having previously chaired the same committee, understands the rules well enough to know the difference. It comes across as an attempt to provoke a reaction rather than engage on procedure. Meanwhile, Mike Johnson remains composed. He lets Nadler speak without interruption, showing a level of restraint that stands out in that moment. When Johnson responds, he focuses on the rules. He explains that the amendment was ruled out of order because it wasn't germane, meaning it wasn't relevant to the subject of the bill. The bill itself was centered on supporting local law enforcement and condemning the defund the police movement. The proposed amendment, however, focused on January 6th, which shifts the topic entirely. From a procedural standpoint, that distinction matters. As chair, Johnson's role is to enforce those rules, and his explanation reflects that. Even after this clarification, Nadler continues to push back. That's when Johnson steps in more firmly, making it clear that while disagreement is allowed, the authority of the chair must be respected. He essentially reasserts control of the proceedings to move things forward. In the end, the exchange highlights two different approaches, one leaning into confrontation and broader political messaging, the other sticking closely to procedure and order. It's a moment that shows how much tone and method can shape how these hearings play out.